Hello, welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me. I've been asked to make the 10 rings for somebody, and I thought there might be somebody out there that would be interested to see how I made them. To make my rings, I'm going to be using a variety of different materials. The first one that I'm going to be using is a 2mm piece of foam packaging. I'm going to be painting that in Mars Black. I need about 15, but I'm painting a little bit extra, so I'm doing 17 by about 28 centimeters. So while we're waiting for the paint to dry, I'm going to be cutting out some templates for my rings. Now, these particular measurements are for the person that I'm actually making it for. So everybody's measurements are going to vary somewhat, but I'm giving you my measurements so that you can use them maybe as a base to work off. So my first ring I'm doing is at 2.8 centimeters. The next one that I'm doing, I'm making them go up by 4 millimeters. So each time they will get bigger by 4 millimeters. So the next one is 3.2, and then the next one is 3.6, and then the next one goes to 4, and the last one should go to 4.4, but the person's arm is just a little bit bigger, so I'm having to go with a 4.5. But that's roughly the measurements that I'm going to be going with. So now I'm just going to cut all these circles out. So now the black piece is dry, so what I'm doing is I've taken, and we're going to flip it over, and on the reverse side, what I've done is I've measured 1.5 centimeters and I've gone in by 2 millimeters on either side, and then I'm going to be using my little tool that I've made to carve into that, and you need to have 10 strips like that. For the next part, I've made myself a very primitive little tool because my wood burner and my styrofoam hot iron are just a little bit too thick. So what I've done is I've taken a piece of wire, which is a 0.9 millimeter wire, which is just ordinary fencing wire, and I've just buckled it and twisted it like that so that I can get it into my little peg, and I'm going to put that in the candle and heat it, and then just burn into the thin foam that we have marked off with our lines. The 1.5 centimeter line there, and we've got 2 millimeters in on each side. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to be copying the pattern that is on the 10 rings. So I managed to get a picture of what the pattern looks like, and I'm just going to be carving that or burning that into all my little pieces of foam. And then just continue burning all of them the same way. I've burnt all my designs into the foam now, and now we're going to just flip it over. So we've got the black side facing up, and I'm going to be painting it now by using rich gold, which is just an acrylic paint, to do the next step. So I've got a wee little sponge that I'm going to be using. If you can get a sponge that has got a bit of texture to it, that's got some holes in it, it gives it a bit of a nicer finish. So I'm going to be taking this little piece, and what I'm doing is I'm dipping the sponge into the gold paint and then taking most of it off so I don't have too much on it, and then we're going to just start dabbing that all over our design. Like that, and then just cover the whole piece. I've just turned the gold engraved piece over so that I can see where we marked earlier to do the 1.5, and now just cut all of those down at 1.5 centimeters so that you've got 10. So the next thing I'm doing is I'm just taking a 2-litre soft drink bottle and I'm cutting the top off at that ridge so that I've got a straight line, so, and cutting the bottom off as well, so you're left with the centerpiece. Now I don't know whether you can see on my bottles, they have got a double ridge in the center which makes them curl, so you need to cut the ridges off on both sides. Then we're going to cut 10 pieces at 2 centimeters each. I've marked my 2 centimeters on my plastic now. I'm going to just cut those out with a pair of scissors. So when marking the rings, I used a gold marker so that I can get a line in the middle as well, so that, because the next thing we're going to be doing is I'm using this spray adhesive, and we're going to take one of the pieces that we carved and painted gold, these ones, and we're going to be gluing those on in between the two lines, so we've got a wee bit on either side. Because this is a contact adhesive, you have to spray it on both pieces and wait for it to get a little bit tacky, and then you put them together. Don't forget to put the adhesive on the reverse side of the gold. And we just wait for those to get tacky and then we'll put them together. I've just weighted the plastic down because it's very, very curly. So it's tacky now, so we're going to just glue those two together. So you have something that looks like that. I've got a very, very thin yoga mat, which is only 2.5 millimeters thick. And what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to cut out 1 centimeter strips on this, and I'm going to need 10 pieces. I've cut out all my EVA foam. To make my gold trim that's going to go around the rings, I'm using this foam packaging that I cut off a sound bar, and I'm just going to be painting that all black. And I've painted like 45 centimeters by 30 centimeters because that's about how much that I'm going to use, and then I'll be painting that gold. Depending on the thickness of the EVA foam that you're using, I'm using the EVA foam that's only 5 millimeters thick. So for my measurement that I'm going to be cutting out is 1.2 centimeters, and you're going to need 20 pieces. And the other measurement that you're going to need is 20 pieces at 6 millimeters each. I've got my yoga mat, which is a slightly thicker one than the one we used previously. This one is like 5 millimeters thick. And what I've done is I've taken the templates that we cut out and I'm just placing them onto the yoga mat to work out how much I need. So in total you're going to need to cut out 20 circles. So I'm just measuring that to see how much of the yoga mat I need. So I've worked out I need about 58 centimeters by 58 centimeters. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint with Mars Black. Now that the black paint is dry, I'm going to be using the rich gold metallic paint once again, and we're going to just take the sponge and just dab it all over to give it a bit of a weathered effect. I'm just putting on some gloves. It does tend to get a wee bit messy. So dabbing your sponge into your paint and taking most of it off because you don't want to have it too thick, and then just start dabbing it all over and just cover the whole piece. So that's what my piece looks like, all covered now. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking one of those pieces of EVA foam that we cut, which are 1 centimeters, and then I'm wrapping it around our templates that we cut out of the cardboard. I'm using this UV resin, and what I've done is I've placed it into a mould like this and put it into my blue light heat lamp, and I put it in for 99 seconds, and it should be soft enough for me to mould around. So I've just taken it out, I've placed the lights in the position where they're supposed to go, and I've just moulded that piece of resin around my template. So you can see it's still quite soft and squishy, and now I'm just going to put it back underneath to cure so it can set at that particular size. I've made all the rings out of the resin. The person that I'm making these 10 rings for wanted to have LEDs but didn't want wires going up his arm, so I've had to come up with another idea. So I've managed to get hold of these little tiny battery packs. Now when you put the light on, as you can see, it is colour changing and it flashes. So what I've done is I've bought some other LEDs which I'm going to be putting into this one. So now if you manage to get hold of something like this, how you open them is there's a tiny slot just over here. I'm using an X-Acto knife to get in there, so you have to squash it in there and press down the wee tab at the back and the piece will pop out. Now to change this light, as you can see here, that wire and this wire are folding over the light wire. So what you have to do is just open these, gently open them so that you don't snap them. And then you can take the globe out, just hold on to the light on off switch and then just gently lift the globe out and then move across to the other side and then just ease it out from its little slot here by pulling these wires up to release them. I've got this 4-strand LED, so it's red, blue and green. So what you have to do is just separate the wires just a wee bit so you can check to see which one of them is actually the blue. So I'm just using this battery to get an idea of what it is. So we have red with the 2 outside wires. The next one, changing the polarity of the batteries, we've got green and change the polarities again, and we've got, that's the red, that's the green. So lifting these 2 wires up here, we check what those ones are, and that's the blue. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut the red and green off. So just make sure again that I've got the right colours. So that's the blue. So I'm just using a pair of flush cutters to cut as close as I can to the actual globe. Without cutting the wires I need. So we're left with just the 2 wires now. So now before you cut them, what you need to do is make sure that you've got the right polarities touching, because the blue, the long one, has got to be the positive side. So we're keeping that one long, and matching, taking the one that we've just taken out, matching the distance of the wire so that it can go back in. So now we're going to bend this wire in this position because that's where that one is lining up over here. So I've just got a pair of pliers that I'm going to be using to get the exact distance for the wire to bend. So that's where the wire needs to bend. But now I'm going to just check once more to see I'm bending the right wire. So we're all good with that. Now this one we're going to be just bending it upwards. So just take your wire, hold it tight and just bend this wire upright. So it's now sticking out in that direction. Now we need to just check and see how high we need to cut it. So just going to cut off this part here, because otherwise it'll be too long to fit into the little light thing. So once again, just using my flush cutters and then just cutting it. And now we take it and put it back into the light switch. So insert the globe first and then put the little leg one into the slot that is behind the battery and just push that in tight. Bring the other leg round and placing it in the position where we had it before. So wire's got to go over this first one and behind that one, and then we're just going to close the wires down. And then check before you put the casing on that it's actually working. And now we've got our blue light. And then just replace the casing. And that's ready to go into our rings. For each ring that you're going to be making, you need to have 4 circles for each size. So cut out your 20 circles for the rings. Now what I've done is I've measured, taking the template, because the radius on that one was 3.6 centimeters, so I've measured on here 3.6 centimeters, and then I've added the extra 1 centimeter on the side. It goes 3.6 and then 4.6, and then you just cut those ones out. Now that you've got all your rings cut out, it's time to engrave them. I'm going to be using my same little peg with the piece of wire attached to it, and I'm going to be just carving in some of the inscriptions that are on the rings. What I'm doing is I'm taking a fairly thick marker and I'm just going to mark a wee bit in on either side so that I know where I'm going to be engraving. So this will be the section here that I'm going to be putting my inscriptions on. So now you just have to engrave all 20 of them. So that's what my inscriptions look like. On the EVA foam that you painted gold, what we're going to do now is we're going to cut out 5mm strips, and you're going to need 20 of those. So what I've done is I've flipped mine over and I've marked it at the back of it so I can just cut that out. I'm going to actually be using a pair of scissors to cut these out, because sometimes you get a bit of a frayed edge if your blade is not really sharp. So cut out your 20 pieces. You might not need 20 depending on the size of your rings. So I've cut out 19 because I'm sure I'm going to be able to get 2 of the little ones out of one of the long strips. Once you've shaped all your EVA foam around your templates, now paint the inside of them Mars black, and then we're going to paint them with gold when they're dry. Around the inner piece of EVA foam that we've painted gold, what I'm doing is I'm taking some of this really fine satin type ribbon, and I'm tying a strand around, because it's really thin and soft. It's not going to be too uncomfortable. So I'm doing 3 knots around it because it's a bit soft, and then I'm just going to cut that off. And now I'm going to try and put a knot around there. Now I've got this pair of suture scissors, so all you do is you take the end pieces. You could probably use a pair of tweezers doing this. So just taking the end pieces, putting the scissors in, winding it around the scissors through the back, and then pulling it through and grabbing it in between the scissors nose, and then just pulling it through like that, and it gives you a nice small little knot, and then you just pull it tight and then release them. So just put a loop on like that on all of the rings, and then we're going to turn that inward, and this is so that we can actually pull the section that we're not attaching for the batteries, and we just pull that, so it'll be attached like that, and to get the battery pack out it'll just be pulled forward like that. When you're putting your little loop on, try and not put it on the joined section. Try and put it a little bit further away, because that's about the size of the battery pack that we're going to be using, and it won't interfere with the join, which is a wee bit further away. Now that we've got all our pieces prepared, we can start assembling it. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm taking the rings that we did, and on the inside ring only, on the inside part of the ring, what I'm using is this fast grip contact adhesive, and I'm going to be placing it about around the outside, on the inside piece here, and on the back, and then of course, being contact adhesive, you have to apply it to the strip that we're going to be attaching as well. I'm just using a toothpick to apply the contact adhesive. So now that our pieces are slightly tacky, you're going to take your piece of gold and trying to leave about 3 millimeters, so that that part is actually sticking up when you have a look at it from this side. So try and get it as even as you can. I know it's not easy, but if you can try and get it a little bit even, that'd be good. And then just trim off the excess. And now, starting on the good side, just push it over like that, and then just go all the way around, and then do the back as well, and then your ring should look like that. Now just do all 20 rings, but only on the inside ring. I've placed the template inside the rings now so that it can hold the ring in shape while we glue the gold strips of EVA foam onto the sides. I'm going to be using the contact adhesive again, and I'm just going to be applying it with the toothpicks. Don't forget to put a bit of contact adhesive where you've cut it to join it. And then just do all 20 like that. While you've got your template in place, what I've done is I've taken one of my little lights and I've marked a certain section over there where I'm not going to be gluing the band on the inside like that, because I want to be able to just pull it away like that so that I can remove the lights when I want to change the batteries. So now you just have to contact around and then glue it in place. And then you can remove the template to use for the next one. So before we can put the top piece on, we have to make a little indentation for the actual switch to come through. And now, because the EVA foam is quite thick in comparison to this tiny little switch that we've got on the lights, we have to cut out quite a big hole. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to fold it over and I'm just going to cut out a V in there so that we can actually get our finger in there to switch it on and off. So I'm just going to cut a small V in here. Just be careful that you don't cut through the whole thing. Go nice and slow. So that should be big enough for our finger to get into to do the on-off switch. And now all you have to do is just touch that up with a bit of gold paint. Once you've got your hole, put your template back in, because now what we're going to be doing is the piece that we did our carving and placed onto the plastic strip. We're going to be taking that and using some contact adhesive, you're going to glue it along the side, flush like that. You're probably going to need a weight or something to hold this particular strip down because it's quite curly. So I've weighted mine down so that it doesn't curl over on itself when we're trying to attach this. To keep my battery pack in place, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using some hot glue and just in a few spots just to hold down the resin ring that we made. And on the other side, because I haven't gone all the way to the battery pack because I want to be able to get the battery pack out, I'm just going to be putting a small blob of glue there just to keep the battery pack firm so that when you switch it on and off it doesn't move. So I'm just going to take that out. So I've marked where I'm going to put some glue. I'm just going to put a bead of glue there and then just put the glue on there. And then we'll test that all before we actually put the final covering on the top. So I put the lights on to check that everything is working. And as you can see, it's working quite nicely. When it comes time to put the small ones together, you'll notice that nobody's going to be able to get their hand through there. So these ones have all got to be cut, the first one and the second one. So I'm cutting them all before I assemble them all so that I can get the pieces together, because I'm going to be joining them by just using magnets. So this is one of them that you can see it's not quite finished yet because it's still got to get the gold ridge on it, but the magnets just clip together like that. And because this is foam, the way these ones are going to be going on is they're just going to open and twist so that they can go on like that. If you're doing something more rigid, you might want to cut it through that section so when it opens it does that instead, but I can do the swivel movement with these ones. To put the magnets on, I've attached all the pieces together, so the pieces like that, and what I've done is I've taken like 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter little squares like this, and I'm keeping the gold sides together, and then I'm just going to be using some contact adhesive by placing it directly on the line where we've cut through, so it will just sit like that. And then I'm going to be burning holes through these ones and inserting the magnets. I'm going to be using these jewelry findings. They're magnets. They're really strong little magnets. So that's what I'm going to be using in there. Make sure when you're putting your lights in as well that you're putting them so that your light is shining away from the magnets, because the light is going to travel in that direction. Don't make it that you put your light in and it's hitting this section here, so make sure that your light is going in the opposite direction to your opening. To secure the magnets in place, I'm going to be hot gluing them in there, and I've taken a piece of 20 gauge jewelry wire and I'm just going to be attaching that. I've placed little pieces of plastic in the bottom of my rim so I can glue the wire to that, because these are really strong magnets and they will just pull out, so you have to secure them quite firmly. And on the inside where the magnets are located, I'm going to be painting them gold so that when they open it's the same color all the way through. So I've already painted them black and now I'm just going to paint them the gold. So that's how I've attached my magnets on the inside on both sides, so it just snaps closed. Once you've got all your pieces in place, now we're going to glue this last piece in by putting some contact around here and then all around the edges on the inside, and then this will just lower down into there. This can be a little bit tricky, so just go slow or put it in as quick as you can, but make sure that the contact is not quite sticky so that it doesn't contact immediately. So I'm putting mine in with it a bit wet, but lining up my light switch in the right position and just placing it in. So we've got it all in place now. Once you've finished placing your plastic piece in, what we're going to do now is we're going to put some contact cement around the sides here, and we're going to take one of the 6mm strips of gold that we painted, and we're going to glue that around the sides like that. And then just attach all 20 strips around the sides like that. I'm going to be using this brilliant Seal of Finish floor polish, and I'm going to be using it to bring out the colours of the rings. What I'm doing now is I'm taking a rubber glove, those like silicone type gloves, and I'm just cutting off little pieces like that so that I can put it into the lighting mechanism so that it just protects it a little bit so that we don't get any of the floor polish onto the lighting system. So just like that. I'm just going to be applying the polish with an ordinary paintbrush, because I find if you use a cloth it seems to take off a little bit of the paint, and we're trying to protect the paint now, so just try and not get any in the lighting mechanism, so when you're painting it just move it in the opposite direction. Obviously these are going to have to be done in 2 stages. So for my first coat I'm going to be holding my ring on the inside like that, and I'm going to be painting the polish onto the outside rings like this, and then this one as well, and then when I flip it over then I'll paint the inside of it and the other side. You see how it changes the colour and gives it a really nice shine. So just paint all 10 of them. You just need to do really light coats because we're going to be doing 3 coats. So I decided for the smaller ones not to put the resin bracelets that we made around it, because I found that the light is sufficient to go around the small ones. So these ones have only got the little lights in, and you'll see in the next pictures that they light up just as well. So my rings are completed now, and as you can see with the polish they give them a really brilliant shine. So I'm going to put them on my arm. They're going to be a little bit big, but just give you an idea of what they look like. I really hope that helped you out for your cosplay, or in this case for Halloween. If you found this video helpful or you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Really appreciate it if you would subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.